Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Member Services Advisory Committee. I'm calling this meeting to order at 2:35 p.m. Before I move further, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that SFU and SFSS is located on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Katzie nations. And unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, that we are currently situated on occupied territories. This Thursday is also Canada Day, and I also just encourage you folks to take a minute as to, if you are celebrating Canada Day, why, and what the impact that has on Indigenous peoples on these territories. So we'll move on to the roll call of attendance. I'll go first. My name is Jess. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the VP Events and Student Affairs and the chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee. And my access needs, please be patient with me. This is the first meeting that I am chairing for the semester and for the year. I'm still getting used to doing Robert's rules as well. So if I have any errors or anything like that, please feel free to call me in and let me know, and I'll correct my mistakes to improve for next time. That would be very helpful. Thank you. And then we'll move on. Gabe is coming later. I will move on to education counselor. Please state your name, your pronouns, and your access needs. Jen, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jen. My pronouns are she and her, and all my accessibility needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sandra?
Hi everyone, my name is Sandra. My pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met. I'm just gonna keep my camera off because I'm in a super dark room just to keep it cool in here. So.
Yes, please do that. Sandra is also the economics counselor. Next, we have our philosophy counselor.
Hi, my name is Tony. He, him, his. Access needs are met. I'm also keeping my camera off because I'm currently in the crawl space to avoid the heat.
Please do that as well. Next, we have our society staff, our operations organizer. I don't believe she is here. Our member services coordinator for Surrey.
Sorry, mute wasn't working. I am Shelley. I use she, her pronouns. Surrey coordinator. I'm going to keep my camera off because I am dressed very, not great right now because of the heat. Thank you.
It's okay if everyone's camera is off. It's for today. I understand it's really difficult to have a Zoom when it's really hot out. So I appreciate all of your time for here today. Next, we have our member services coordinator for events.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dipti, pronoun she, her, hers. All my access needs are met, but unfortunately, I have a hard time hearing because my AC behind me is too loud and it's not working properly. So I think it's screaming that it's hot out there. So you may not hear me speaking, but if I miss something, I might just put it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipti, for letting me know. I can read it out for you. Ricky is not here today. He is our member services coordinator for clubs. We have next our member service coordinator for clubs again, Nancy.
Hi there, I'm Nancy. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and all my access needs are met. And it's going to be hard to hear me because I've got every single fan I have on, but it's not helping.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll probably put on headphones just because it's a little bit quiet. Next, we have our member services coordinator clubs, Melanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie. Pronouns are she, her, hers, and my access needs are met.
Our board organizer, Ella, is in another meeting. I'm unsure if she'll be attending today. Do we have an administrative assistant for today? Okay, well, hopefully they'll watch this recording. I'll take some minutes as well. Moving on, we'll go to item 4.1, consent agenda. Be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to any of the motions in the consent agenda? If you do, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Okay, all those in favor of this motion seeking unanimous consent? Oh, Anna. Okay, let us go back. We haven't passed anything, so I think that's good.
That's okay, we can vote.
Anna, would you like to state your name, your role at SFSS, your pronouns, and your access needs for today, please?
Hi, all, I'm Anna. I'm one of the member services coordinators. I work with student unions and groups. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my access needs are met. Except my camera and sound might be a little off because I have air conditioner here that is blasting full cold air and it's still 30 degrees. Does not help much.
Thank you, Anna. Sorry for skipping you. Okay, I'll just go back and redo that. Moving on to item 4.1, consent agenda. Be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? All those in favor of this motion seeking unanimous consent? Okay, motion carried as presented. Next item, 5.1, adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Can I have a mover?
Sandra moves.
Sandra moves. Thank you, Sandra. Can I have a seconder?
Tony seconds.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, give me 1 second because I have to take notes. I don't know if our admin assistants are here. Okay, next we have item 6.1, member service is advisory committee introduction. And I'm going to share my screen and do a very short presentation about what we're going to be doing today and what this committee does. Okay, so welcome to the first Member Services Advisory Committee for the year. Right now we have the date set to be Tuesdays, 2:30 to 4:30. Sorry, 2:30 to 4. Once we have our at-large members, this date might change and we do meet bi-weekly. So I will keep you posted with calendar invites and all of that stuff. So what do? We work with clubs and departmental student unions. Sometimes we approve grants and club funding. We help resolve club DSU internal issues. Last semester and last year, actually, when PUM was in this role, they looked a lot at the club's terms of reference, which I attached through the agenda. We'll just make sure that it's kept up to date. We take out any irrelevant policies and we add policies to improve member services, especially once we roll back onto in-person activities. So who do we work with? We have our SFSS staff, and we'll do another introductions and I'll ask the staff just to go into more detail about what they do on a day-to-day basis. Myself as VP Events, we also work with our counselors. So we have Tony, Jen, Sandra here. We also have a vacant position. And we also have our student at-large members, which we finished having applications for, but the number was really low. So I do have to figure out how to fill in those vacancies. So what was done last year, Corbett helped me fill this out because he was there for some of this. Some discussion items that they talked about was about Greek life on campus, clubs terms of reference, funding guidelines, clubs days, gift card funding, clubs and student union funding model review, club portal updates, room booking procedures, student group training, and other items. So that's what they did in the last year. Okay. Are there any comments or discussion on this presentation? It was just very short. It's just a very short overview. Honestly, we're just going to be going with the flow with whatever comes up with clubs and student unions and return to campus in person. So there will be more to talk about. I promise you, this meeting probably won't go until 4 as well. Moving on, we'll go to the discussion items. So 7.1 SFSS staff introduction. I'm going to go by the list again from the agenda. I just ask that staff go into detail about what they do on a day-to-day basis, anything that they want to see in the upcoming year, how they will work with us as well as MSAC. Some things you noticed from last year that was concerning to you, or let's say was memorable, something that is carried over into my term, anything to help Tony, Jin, myself, and Sandra out. How you would like to be communicated. So all of that stuff. I'll go back to the list. Shelley, would you like to go first?
Sure. I guess, well, I'm Shelley again. I guess if we're talking about what I do on a day-to-day basis, it's very different right now. It will go back to being more my normal routine in September. So I'm going to talk about that because that relates to Surrey, and that's my big difference being here is I am the person who screens and processes all room bookings in Surrey and works really closely with MECs and facilities. There are a ton of rules in Surrey that are different. I also work with the groups and helping them plan their events there, and I manage the lounge, and well, I sort of helped with another space, but we no longer have that. What else? I don't know, all that stuff. I'm the only person in Surrey. So anything that's done in Burnaby, I do a little bit of it in Surrey. Related to this committee, I think something that I always say, and I'm sure it's not always a popular opinion, is that sometimes what I realized is that we got a lot of stuff that came into this committee that were great ideas and sounded wonderful, but then on paper, there was a reason that they had never been done. And this committee really processed through a lot of that. We often found something in the middle to work with. So I ask that everyone who is a council member, executive on this committee to trust that process, that it's not always going to be as simple as I talked to some people and they said this would be a great idea, and that we're always able to do it. Because there is a reason sometimes that things are done the way they're done, because you work within a much larger organization sometimes, and that restricts things. And we found a way to work with that last time, and it worked really well. So that's, I don't know, I hope that that's enough. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Shelley. That's we're gonna keep that as a reminder. That's what we have all of you for, all of you staff, just to help us out and catch things that we don't see. So thank you. Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna again. I work with student unions and groups. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if it really answers your question, but in the past, this committee has been really good at identifying some issues, and not issues, but like practices, the way we do things with student unions and sometimes with clubs too, that could be improved, and there are a lot of them that could be improved. So I think it would be really great to revisit some and make some solid, changes and kind of finalize it. That would be great. To answer your question about what I do on a day-to-day basis is I work with all aspects of student unions. So starting from their governance stuff, helping them with elections and team management and all kinds of things like that. Reviewing all of their financial stuff. So that's core, travel and conference, and granting, as well as regular check requisitions and reimbursements and all of that. And usually we do event planning for them, which we have not really been doing much except for some virtual stuff. So that's also hopefully going to come back to, at least to some extent, in September. Yeah. I also work with workshops. So I organize workshops for student unions, or help them subsidize their workshops that they want to choose and participate in. So that's kind of most of what I do. I don't know, did I answer all of your questions?
I had a lot, but that covered a lot too, Anna. Thank you. And Dipti?
Oh, hi again. Yes, hello again. I am the Membership Services Coordinator for events. I help Board of Directors with their events. I also plan some of the SFSS events. And my contribution to this committee is actually I just make sure that whatever rules or regulations we have for the club, we do not duplicate that, or we do not do that through the events committee. So sometimes, if, for example, if we are not granting clubs for, say, for example, gift cards, and we don't end up doing it at the events committee. So I just make sure there's correlation and we adhere to the rules or regulations that we set up for clubs and student unions. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Dipti. Nancy?
Just a change, Jess. Can Melanie go first before me?
Yes. Melanie?
Hi, so I am one of the club coordinators, so I work directly with Nancy and Ricky normally on a daily basis. It's kind of hard to describe. I guess we do so many different things and it changes, but I guess we get a lot of inquiries from students, so we answer their questions about like what they can and cannot do within clubs. Sometimes they need support if there's like conflicts going on. Sometimes they need help with their elections and just governing their clubs. And we do a lot of, right now it's virtual event support, but previously in-person events and room bookings. We do club approvals, grant requests, reimbursements, all that stuff. We also have oversee other things like helping out with the club trust accounts if clubs want to store their money with the society, and various other administrative things behind the scenes like invoicing and stuff like that. We also have a really great team of part-time student staff that are kind of like the front desk workers of the student center, and they assist in supporting all of those services. And something that I learned and really appreciated about this committee when we did it last year for the first time, or my first time experiencing having this committee, is just like collaborating with actual students and getting feedback directly from people, and like taking their input in when we're making decisions. Like I think it's really important to get feedback from students because we're not students, so we don't necessarily know as staff what you guys are thinking or what works the best. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Melanie. Nancy, if you want to talk, that's okay, but if you don't want to, that's okay too, or just use the chat, whatever is accessible for you.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to do something right away too, that's why. Melanie covered a lot of it. There's just a lot of other little things that people don't realize that we do, like Melanie says, like the event things for clubs, the fact man, the catering, all that stuff. The students handle that, and then any problems the staff have to sort of, assist with. One of the things I think is really important, just as a friendly reminder, is that for council to remember and for board to remember that always check with the staff regarding anything, because a lot of times decisions are made really when not all the information is provided, and then there's the cleanup, which is even a lot more work. It's a lot more stress. So I just encourage everybody to please talk to staff. I mean, it's not like you're asking for permission, it's just discussing it, make sure everything's covered, that's all.
Thank you, Nancy. And I see that Gabe arrived. I can PM you the agenda. Now we're moving on to item 7.2, community guidelines. So I'm going to share with everyone a Google document that we'll work on for around 3 to 5 minutes. And I'll put it in the chat. And I think that the way that I just see these community guidelines is for us to set our boundaries or expectations with each other and how we want to communicate with one another, the space that we create, putting inclusivity and accessibility at the forefront in our meetings. How are we going to do that? How are we going to validate each other's ideas and opinions if they're conflicting? How do we communicate that? How do we address things within our own community that doesn't negatively harm or impact people? So I'll just take until, let's say, 3 p.m. and for you in your own head to type out whatever you think the answers to those questions are, and then we can review them afterwards. So until 3 p.m., if everyone can just type. Hi, Corbett. We're just doing community guidelines until 3 p.m. today. It's just the way that we want to create this space. I put the link in the chat. Just 1 more minute. So just seeing the last few words come up on here, and then I can read them out loud. Thank you everyone for participating. So far we have communicate respectfully, listen and don't interrupt others, be mindful of everyone's differences, needs and comfort levels, respect one another's opinions and ideas, adequate time to review the agenda. Apologies on my part for today. Stating pronouns and access needs at all our meetings, and I know that this is in policy too, but just a reminder. Using lists to speak and speak in your turn, and calling in versus calling out. So calling in would be respectfully turning the discussion into a corrective learning process. No pressure to turn on camera or talk. If you just need to use chat for one of these meetings, that's totally fine too, if that's the way that you choose to engage. Provide trigger warnings and content warnings if the discussion at hand may be triggering for some folks. Provide action items at the end of meetings. I think that's helpful if we need to write down any last minute notes so that we can be prepared for the next one as well. If there are any items that may be for disclosure, for example, problems with an individual that is more appropriate between two individuals that is considered private, it may be best to do this one-on-one off of camera or with a mediator as well. Give proper notice if you're unable to make a meeting. Attend all meetings on time and be ready to engage with others in the way that you choose. And state clearly if something is a discussion topic or an action item that needs to be voted on. Are there any comments or discussion on these community guidelines? I will clean this up. So my action item, I will clean this up and then I'll showcase it again to our next MSAC meeting. Hopefully by then we have at-large members, but I don't know. Is everyone okay with this so far? And then this is an ongoing document, so nothing's set in stone yet. I just wanted to get some stuff down. Thank you, Melanie. Okay, so I'll clean it up and I will show it for our next meeting. Every time I stop my screen share, I always think I end the meeting by accident and then I panic just a little bit. Okay, moving on to 7.3, club services during COVID-19 and fall return to campus. Currently, some of the staff and I and Gabe and Corbett are in sub working groups. So we have the sub working group where it's like a whole bunch of staff and execs that talk about a lot of general things. And then within that sub working group are sub working groups. So we presented this at the council meeting, I think like a couple of weeks ago as well, where we have ones for room bookings, events, COVID-19 safety guidelines, etc. So you have a whole bunch of them. As for the club services during, yes, so thank you, Gabe. There are many groups within the larger student union building opening plan working group. Yes, that would make more sense. Thank you. As for the club services during COVID-19 and fall return to campuses, I remember one time at our exec meeting, I think it was the last one, which was our first hybrid meeting, we talked about making checklists and guidelines of when we return to campus, what clubs and student unions need to actually host their events or host their meetings, whether they be off campus or on campus, and if we can provide any resources that will help them do that. Not only a checklist, but if we can provide masks, hand sanitizers, whether their events can be off of campus as well, for example, like SFU Hiking Club. So that is in the works as well. We do need to, the sub-working group of the room booking policies is happening, I think, this week. It was rescheduled. So that's going to happen. We'll have more information of how we're actually going to do this within our student union building, when we can allow clubs to have in-person meetings and how we're going to do that. This is just more of an update on my end. Does any of the staff want to give any updates or fill in any gaps that I missed? Thank you, Shelley. And is there any questions from our counselors, Tony, Sandra, or Jin? Thank you, everyone. So I think this discussion item has been exhausted. I just wanted to update you on that. Next, we have the club's terms of reference. So I attached that to the agenda and I hopefully it went through. This was worked on by last year's at-large representative, Poom, and the last year's committee of MSAC. If you can just take a look at your own time to review these clubs TOR, and if you have any comments or questions about it, bring it to the next MSAC meeting and we'll go look at it in more detail. Specifically, if we might have to change some of the policies regarding in-person planning, but we'll know more after these sub-working groups as well. That was a very short discussion item. Does anyone have any questions or comments? It's going to be a very short meeting. Yes, so we'll tailor it to fit when we return in campus and remove any relevant items. Next, we have discussion item 7.5, in-person event support for fall semester, submitted by our member services coordinator for clubs, Melanie.
Hi, so we've had a lot of inquiries from groups saying that since government restrictions have lifted, they've been wanting to do things with their club members like hiking or other in-person events. And so, you know, of course we can't like stop them or anything, but we just can't provide funding or say that we're officially supporting their events. And so I know the executive met last week to talk about this. I had already submitted this agenda item before that though, so I guess it would be good to have an update just to see where the discussion is at and maybe to get an idea of when the policy might be changing, just because people want to do more things before the summer's over and they'd like our support.
Yes, so we spoke at it our last executive committee meeting, and I think we're going to pass a motion soon that allows for in-person events to some capacity following provincial health orders and their guidelines, and ours as well within the next few executive committee meetings. Gabe or Corbett, would you like to clarify on that process?
Honestly, I think if we meet once or twice next week, we can get a recommendation and a decision made by council next meeting. So not tomorrow's meeting, but 2 weeks later, or even at executive committee meeting on July 6th. So it could be very soon that we can get this information out to clubs and student unions. We just need to make sure we're doing our due diligence and putting in time and effort to making sure that any guidelines that we put out are clear, efficient, consistent with public health orders, and comprehensive for our members to be able to follow.
That sounds good. Thanks.
And I guess, Melanie, we would have to look at our club's TORs again and change that within in-person club events, right?
I don't believe the policy was actually in the club terms of reference. I think that was just like more of a broader like SFSS policy, so it wasn't in the club terms of reference specifically.
Okay, and Nancy has a direct response.
Whoops, sorry about that. I believe Matt mentioned that a checklist would be really good, and I agree with that because it's something that could be distributed to the clubs, DSUs, whatever, so that they can make sure that everything's checked off. This should be okay to be submitted in for funding. So is that what's in the plans?
Yes, a checklist for within in-campus and then off-campus activities as well. I can draft up these checklists and then have it approved by MSAC, if that would be helpful for our next meeting, I believe in the next 2 weeks. Is everyone okay with that? Cool. Okay. I will present it to MSAC within the next 2 weeks for separate checklists on events, on how they're done in person and off of campus as well, what students need and what we can provide. I will be asking for counselor feedback, and if at that time we have at-large feedback, then for sure, and especially staff feedback as well, just to make sure that we are getting the appropriate items from the appropriate line items for the budget, if we need to pay for anything, if it follows our policies and all of that. Okay, and is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, and we can move on to item 7.6, clubs double dipping for SFSS funds, submitted by Member Service Coordinator Clubs, Nancy.
Hi there. Okay, this one here, I think it can end up being quite a discussion because the Student Society has never allowed clubs double dip with, especially if they are part of a university recreation or a sports team or whatever you want to call it, and then also start up a club itself, because that's double dipping. We're going to run into a problem if we do allow this to start happening, and I would like some sort of assurance from the board and council that this is not to happen. Otherwise, we're going to have clubs like I guess the tennis club, or if there's a tennis team or basketball, to say, oh, well, they're allowed to, so why don't we do it? That's really going to start draining the society's funds. So I think we better get some sort of clarity on this, because I believe Esports is one of the ones that are present right now that is a club, and also now part of athletics and recreation.
Corbett.
Hi. So in this case, double dipping is defined for people outside the SFS, whether they're student group or whatever, also getting, like, say, SFU funding, and then also getting SFS funding through becoming a club or through anything else. I just want to make sure we have the definition very clear, because when I first started, double dipping was not allowed between, say, a club wanting to, or a group wanting to get funding from, say, 2 different committees, like granting committee plus accessibility committee or something like that, for an event or for an activity. So just want to make sure we're clear on that definition first. So this is, yeah, go ahead, Shelley.
My mic's not working. I think that that's what this is about, is this time around when we're referring to double dipping would be being funded by both SFU and SFSS, or finding a way to do that so that they have support on both sides. But the other one you mentioned is also something that comes up regularly. Yeah,
because we can talk, because that would probably be like the more SFS internal double dipping. We can have a separate conversation on, because we have had some policy changes that changes things. That was created last summer or past last summer that I don't think we've actually really gone through and explored. But related to this one, yeah, because I think it really depends on what the funding is. If it's a situation of they're like an external club that, or sorry, if they're asking for funding as an external group, yeah, we do have a special grant funding thing that are for people that are SFS members who are not necessarily part of a club or a group that they can actually ask for funding in a very specific way. It's under our finance policies. And we haven't used it. I don't think we've ever used it yet. It was created again last summer. The goal being to have that gap, to fill that gap where people that were not necessarily, had like a good idea, but weren't part of a group that we recognize and financially supported. This is a little bit different because obviously like we have some groups that are effectively external to SFS, have SFS members in it, and are trying and would like to get financial support for activities. And yeah, so in the case of like esports, last time I did contact Darian, and he said so far they haven't, like Recreation has not given them any kind of one way or the other if they're become varsity or not. I don't know. I was going to check with SFE Rec to get verification on that. But if put inside esports, this is still valuable for let's say the SFE Tennis Club and stuff. Because I remember I chatted with them in the past, and they were doing like a lot of little donut fundraisers for themselves to try to so they can pay for coaches and whatnot because they don't get much funding through SFE Recs. If we ever wanted to, as an organization, try to find a way to support a situation where we're supporting our members, then yeah, we'd have to develop an entire different set of policies and stuff for that, I believe. Currently, yeah, our policies don't allow, well, no, okay, how am I going to say this? I think there is a pathway for some groups to be able to request student funding or special funding, but we've just never done it yet. And I don't think we ever advertised that it's an option.
Oh, Shelley?
So Corbett, I just want to be clear. Like, I know that there was that thing, and I don't know that it got announced that individuals could get money or that kind of stuff. So that aside, or grant funding that doesn't come from our clubs or SU granting pool, which are two, right? So even taking the funding out of the picture right now, just for a second, and I'm going to use esports as the example because I think that is one that is coming up. If esports is accepted as a varsity group and becomes a varsity group, which has, say, the president of esports currently ends up leading that, they are now a club and a varsity organization, but they will go to competitions most likely with funding from both. Or they will find a way to do that. I only say that because I've seen other groups, they try to get funding any way they can, obviously. Is that something that is currently allowed? And I mean, my belief would be that it shouldn't be allowed because that's a really slippery slope.
Current process, the council could go to council, pass for the funding to be supported for that, but not through our traditional granting process. However, as you said, if they're still classified as a club, then theoretically they could literally just apply for it. Then it becomes more of a thing of, do we fund what they're asking for? Because we've had other situations where we've had, say, student groups that are getting sponsorship for an activity from SFU that are, say, they're SFS student unions or SFS clubs that get SFU funding, like some of the business clubs are a prime example of this. And they still apply for us for funding for various activities. Would they be like, is the primary issue that these groups are classified as like esports or varsity groups are classified as fully under SFU? And so we should treat them fully separate as an external group, and then we should have separate processes and policies for that, and that we don't allow them to have any kind of partnership or sister or brother club that like it has to be fully separate? Or do we want to have some kind of separate rules for that supports some social arm of their group? Like varsity is about competition in sports and traveling, all of those costs that we can't afford to support because we just don't have the money for it, versus the social side of things where it's more like community building and having fun on campus and things like that.
I think Shelley has a direct response.
Another direct response. Sorry, Corbett.
No, it's totally fine. It's the whole point of this.
I think that the biggest question is, I think funding becomes secondary to whether or not we would just allow a club to then become a varsity organization and still remain a club. Because obviously at that point they're going to get the funding. But when I hear you say that, yes, there could be the competitive side, and then there could be the more the more social side. What would we need to differentiate the two? Because for example, if the president of the club is the captain of the football team, who's the president of the football club, it wouldn't be football. It's a stupid example, but they're still using, right? They're really just, most likely they're just doing it for the money, right? They've got so how can that work within our system?
The other thing too, I'm wondering is it's
Nancy has a direct response.
Sorry, my apologies. Go ahead, Nancy. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I agree with Shelley, because whether it be football, whether it be basketball, whatever it might be, we still have to come up with an absolute answer, not just a, well, maybe this or that. It has to be yes or no, because you've got a lot of different sports, and I think you're aware of it. And it's not just sports, it will be other things that'll start coming up, and then you're gonna get this. So all of a sudden your money is gonna go a lot, not very far at all. People are gonna be cut back because that funding will only go so far.
Yeah.
Shelley has a direct response to Nancy.
Well, no, to Corbett from before. Well, and to Nancy. Something else that may be an option would be having, like when I said, and to myself, because when I say the football club and the football club, it may be that they have to have different names. Like the football, SFU football couldn't be called SFU football when it's a club. It would have to be recreational field sport. I don't know, fun field sports or something, right? So that you can tell there's a difference, because there's also a chance for confusion. And part of that for me is also SFSS branding. It's really nice when our clubs recognize their SFSS. So go ahead now, Corbett.
Yeah. I guess this is maybe a tangent question, but it's just for my own understanding. How does some of the other groups that are things like the Red Cross Club or the UNICEF Club and stuff, how are they related to their parent organizations? Like UNICEF and such, like how do we navigate that situation between those groups? Because I know they do some fun, sometimes these clubs do fundraising and such for these like charity drives for these parent organizations. Do those clubs get any funding or support from those parent organizations, or are they basically just there to, like, I'm curious how we navigate that interaction, because it feels similar to me, it just in the sense that SFU is an external organization, and some of these clubs that are also supportive of some of these other major charity groups are also technically part of an external organization, correct?
Melanie and then Nancy.
Yeah, so these clubs do work with their parent organization, but it comes down to like the club terms of reference and the policies. So at the end of the day, they still are following our rules, even if they are given some guidance and potentially some funding from the parent organization for those charities. I think what's different with SFU Rec is that sports clubs have a different set of rules that they need to follow, and so that's not in alignment with our club terms of reference. I'm not too sure on the details, but yeah, that's my understanding of it.
Nancy?
Melanie pretty much covered it all.
Okay, thank you. I was curious how that kind of worked, because I know they've existed for a long time too. Okay. Yeah, I want to reach out to SFU Rec and discuss this kind of stuff with them, because this is not, I don't feel like this is a new thing. And I know that just from my chats the odd time with some of the members of some of the rec clubs, some of them don't get much in the way of funding. It's only like the big ones, like the basketball and football and a few others. So they tend to struggle for everything from, getting coaches and stuff. So in a way, I almost, instead of saying that we should support them, I'd rather us be able to like back them to say, rec, you need to do a better job in supporting these groups. But that's a separate conversation outside of this. I just kind of spitballing at the moment. But yes, I do want to reach out. I think we should reach out to rec and have a meeting with them to talk about their system, because I don't know enough about it. So like right now, esports is potentially a prime example of this could be in a problem, but I can't give a yes or no until I know more information about how each thing is structured. Especially because I feel that we'll have to develop a policy around this anyways. Either one way, depending on what goes down, like what gets decided through council, that we need to create a policy proposal anyways, and I just need more information.
So I think there are things that are still unclear with working with SFU Rec and what they're doing on their end. What we can do moving forward is have staff. I'm guessing Nancy, Shelley, Melanie, Corbett, and myself with SFU Recreation to understand, and maybe Almas with finances.
From the financial side, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe Almas, just to understand what they're doing on their end. And then from that, we're hoping to create a motion or a policy, whether or not clubs and student unions can get support from SFU Rec and SFSS, or if they should be kept separate to prevent any future mistakes. Nancy says in the comments, I think if the group is really good and shows it by winning, SFU will gladly support them. Yeah, with their varsity competitions.
You know that and I know that. Hey, then they can advertise and get.
Yeah. Nancy and Shelley, who do you recommend I reach out to?
To speak about, well, it's not so much recreation you need to talk to, it's athletics.
Okay.
Recreation is that social part to build them up to see if they're good enough to become an SFU. That's the problem. I mean, Curtis is in recreation. He's a great guy, very helpful, and he totally understands where we're coming from. So, he's been very, very good, and he's the one that I've been speaking to about a lot of stuff. But he has no control over recreation or athletics.
Okay, because athletics is athletics like, oh, sorry, I should list.
No, is esports athletics, Shelley asked? I thought it's under recreation.
I'll check into on that because I will.
Isn't it NCAA? Sorry.
Well, no, I don't think so.
That's the thing is,
we don't know. Let's go double. We have to have a meeting with them, and then we'll just from that we'll make that policy or motion of double dipping from funds. Either we support that or we don't.
Yeah, because sorry if I'll list. Sorry, I just force myself to.
Corbett.
With athletics, is athletics also an aspect of like academic side of things? That's why it's much more strict, like in the sense that they have, if you're on an athletic varsity sports team, you also have to be taking classes and all these other things, right? It's not just for, like I said, not for just for fun. It's part of like a league or a competition as such. Usually, yeah. Okay. Yeah, honestly, I think we need to get together to brainstorm a whole bunch of questions. We want to ask athletics to sort out like how their whole system works, the funding, all that stuff, and what they can and can't tell us, and explain also our situation and like, we're a hell of a lot smaller than SFE as a whole, and so like there's maybe we can support, but it's only in very, very limited specific ways, kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Corbett. So that's an action item for me and you. We'll go set up a meeting with some staff and some folks from SFU Recreation and possibly, or maybe not, athletics, just to clarify anything. Are there any other discussion on this item? Okay. Oh, Corbett, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention maybe for the other side of that conversation of the internal double dipping aspect, if we should have a separate, like maybe next meeting, we can have a separate conversation on that, because that that's something that we should actually sort out too, if it's an issue or not.
Thank you, Corbett. I noted that down.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 8.1, appointing vice chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee, submitted by myself. Whereas, the motion reads, whereas per council policies SO1, standing and ad hoc committees, subcommittees, and working groups, 1.5a, the duties of the vice chair include convening meetings in the absence or at the discretion of the chair, and SO 1.5b, any other duties as may be assigned by the chair. Be it resolved to appoint X as vice chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee. I'm now going to be calling for nominations of any of the councilors who would like to be vice chair of the MSAC. May I have a mover? Oh, hold on. Yes, may I have a mover for the motion?
Sandra moves.
Thank you, Sandra. May I have a seconder?
20 seconds.
Thank you, Tony. Okay. Thank you, Gabe, for helping me on these Robert's rules and for everyone for being patient. I'm going to open up nominations now for vice chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee. So my expectations would just be, if in the event that I ever can't make a meeting, hopefully that never happens, you'd be chairing it. And if there are any other duties that I need, for example, helping type notes, general notes for that day, or keeping the agenda moving along or something like that, reading the chat for me during a meeting. It won't be too much on your plate. So calling for nominations from the councilors.
I can nominate myself.
Okay, Tony, thank you. Is the calling for a second round of nominations? I don't think there will be, and the last call for nominations. Okay. Hopefully I say this right. Corbett or Gabe, please correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you, Tony, for nominating yourself. Hopefully that never happens where I have to suddenly cancel a meeting again. Be it resolved to strike X and replace it with Tony Yu as vice chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee. The motion reads, hold on, Corbett, Gabe, would I have to move and second that?
Yes, it's an amendment to the motion. So yeah, I move
Okay. So I will make an amendment to the motion to strike X and replace it with Tony Yu to read, be it resolved to appoint Tony Yu as vice chair of the Member Services Advisory Committee. May I have a mover?
Oh, I could move.
Finn moves. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Tony seconds. Okay. Now we'll go back to the main motion again. Gabe?
You have to vote on the amendment first, and then
Okay.
you can vote on the main motion.
Okay, now we're going to be voting on the amendment to the main motion. Can I have a mover? Oh, no. No.
Basically, just need to ask who's in favor now.
Oh, okay. Seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to not vote in favor, please use the Zoom raise hand function. Seeing as there are no objections, we can move back to the main motion to read. Be it resolved to appoint Tony Yu as Vice Chair of Member Services Advisory Committee. Now we move in second, Gabe? Nope, good. Okay, oh, cool, okay. Now the motion is carried as amended. Nice, I think I did it. Thanks everyone for being patient. Thank you, Tony, for volunteering yourself. Okay, I will get better, I promise. The next, moving on the agenda, 9.1. The next Member Services Advisory Committee will take place on Tuesday, July 13 from 2:30 to 4. Our meetings will never go past 4 because that's when staff hours are over. Okay, and now we'll move on to the adjournment of the meeting. Be it resolved to adjourn the meeting at 3:36 p.m. May I have a mover?
I move.
Sandra moves.
Oh,
Tony moves. Sandra? Oh, sorry. May I have a seconder?
Sandra seconds.
Thank you, Sandra. And that is the end of the meeting. See you in 2 weeks. I'll email everyone with action items. Thank you for being patient with me while I learn. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.